This is the White Belts Odyssey podcast, episode 3. And I've just realized that up until this point, I haven't actually introduced myself on this podcast. So I'm Seb. I'm from Australia and practicing Jiu-Jitsu out of Paris, France. So there we are. This episode's going to be a little bit different. Instead of providing a sort of training log for what I've been doing over the past week or month or whatever, and then sort of talking about lessons I've learned and techniques and stuff like that, I'm going to talk about a book because I've read and finished my first Brazilian Jiu Jitsu book, and I thought it was great. To be honest, I think reading these books are a really good tool for beginners. I know that BJJ Fanatics exists, and you can go on there and buy John Donaher's leg lock saga or whatever, and you can get that. But for beginner white belts, I don't really think that learning techniques specifically, especially like leg locks and some more advanced sort of stuff, is well, I mean, it's valuable, but I don't think it's good for us yet because we don't have the experience and the finesse to sort of learn something on a video and then try and just whip it out in a class. I mean, I don't know, I'm just assuming, but if I try, if I watch one of those videos and then just went into a class and then thought, I'm in the spot where I can crank this leg lock and grabbed it and did it, and then I hurt someone because I, watched the video. I mean, that's counterproductive, and stupid. So I thought the books would be a good place to start, especially for us little newbies. And I picked up a book called Mastering the 21 Immutable Principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by Paulo Guillobel. And it was great, honestly. Like getting just being able to hear the words and advice of a 6-degree black belt for for cheap. Hang on, where is it? I got the Kindle format for €8. That's €8, and you get this whole information dump from a 6-degree black belt. The value of it is just great. So there we go. €8, which is like, I don't know what, $9-10 US. You get this great little book. It's very concise. It's quite short. You can rip through it in an afternoon if you wanted to, but I don't recommend doing that. So first off, why should we read jiu-jitsu books? Or why do I think we should read jiu-jitsu books? I think because, what I just said, it opens up new perspectives. Like, I mean, my Brazilian jiu-jitsu world up until I read this book, my learning center was really only just my gym and the people I train with, which is great. It's, teaching me a lot of stuff which I need because and it's going to be the main place that I learn stuff. But now I'm getting a whole new perspective from this person that I haven't, that I probably won't encounter in real life. And I think it's really important to get as many perspectives as you can on all these different things, especially starting out. Good to cast the net wide and sort of as you practice things, you can, redact, see what you need to work on, see things that apply to you and change all that sort of stuff. So that's a good reason. And then going further into that, it exposes you to new theories and principles, which this book, I mean, it's in the title of the book. It's 21 Immutable Principles of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and this was so helpful to me. Just having somebody lay out the principles of from your overall goal in a jiu-jitsu match down to all the like scaling down further and further. So your overall goals in a jiu-jitsu match and your goals offensively, defensively, your goals in closed guard, your goals in mount, your goals when you've been mounted. Just breaking each little thing down and not it's not giving you moves or anything, but it's giving you foundational principles which really inform absolutely everything you do. And understanding these principles is way more valuable than learning a new move. I mean, understanding one of these principles, you can apply it to absolutely every move, XYZ situation. And some of them are pretty broad situations. And I feel like it's already helped me a bunch. So that's a pretty good reason to pick up some books, and I'm keen to do more in the future. But I started with this one, and it was a good place to start. White belts, highly recommend. Even going up. I mean, this book, he says in it, he says, pick this book up once a year or once a belt or something, because it's always good to come back to these foundational principles. Um, so in saying that, what did I get from this book? I got quite a lot, and he's very articulate and he's very precise in what he says, which he just makes Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu so clear. They provide so much clarity and gives you sort of these ideas to follow that really, I feel, lead you on a great path. One of the first things he says in the book, which I mean, which kind of went against what I originally thought. One of the first things he says, he puts a big emphasis on learning principles over just lots and lots and lots of techniques. Which at the start I was kind of like, but no. Well, before I read this book, I was like, because on last week's topic we talked about different ways you can get smashed, and one of those ways is people knowing techniques that you just haven't been exposed to. And I sort of thought that I was like, but if I learn all the techniques, or if I've been exposed to all the techniques, then I'll sort of know how to counteract them. But then I sort of thought about it and went, no, actually, if you know the principles of what people are trying to achieve in certain techniques, then you don't need to know the precise steps for absolutely every technique. You can sort of see where people are going with one thing and sort of stop yourself getting to that step. It's thinking more steps ahead than the specific movements in the moment, which is going to progress your defense primarily, I think, so much further than if you're just worrying about, oh, I haven't been exposed to this kind of choke before. I don't know what I'm doing, all that sort of stuff. So that already puts you in a good mindset to go further into the book. And in this book, he has so many principles that apply to every single facet of the game. One of the big ones I took away first is my defense sucked when I started, as I'm sure it does for all, noob white belts. But he started saying, well, he puts it a lot more clearly in the book and explains why. But basically, he says use your shins in defense and stay behind your shins. And then going to jujitsu that night, I was like, okay, well, when we roll tonight, I'm going to try and, stay behind my shins. When someone's transitioning to get onto a side control or onto a mount or something, just stick your shin up and block with that. And oh my God, it changed my life. Just little tweaks and breakthroughs like that could seem instinctual to people if they're more advanced, and even sort of instinctual to beginners. Like, I mean, when you sit facing someone, if you're starting on the ground, you have your shins in front of you. But just thinking of keeping your shins in front of you for your whole defensive saga, just I never really thought about that. And just having someone say, just keep your shins in front of you. Already that was great. He gives this he gives a bunch of great analogies and stuff. Another one for being on top in offense, and you have to get the book and read it to really understand where he goes in depth with all this, because it's really great. And it for beginners, and maybe even for higher belts, just going back to these fundamentals, I think would be so great, because you just have little epiphanies again and again. He had this analogy of being a wet rug on top, because there was another point in my rocky beginning when maybe I'd get to mount. I'd be, fluke my way onto mount, but then I'd get on top and then immediately get reversed or something, because I'd sit pretty much upright and stay still and be really rigid and hard and not really know what I'm doing. But then I read this chapter, or this section, where he gives the analogy of being a wet rug, and told the story, which also sort of reminds me of the Hickson Gracie story where he rolled himself up in a carpet to, feel what it was like being not strangled, but held down. But yeah, he gave this analogy of being like a wet rug on top of your opponent when you're in mount. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll give this a try. And then, same sort of thing, big epiphany. I was much more fluid, much more relaxed on top when I was in mount. I stayed down. I got reversed and swept so much less just by, just by thinking of these little principles and conditions and bringing them into the jiu-jitsu. Um, yeah, he just has all of these great little nuggets of wisdom that really put things into perspective and is really important to hear for white belts. And I feel like, just little things like that, like staying fluid in mount or stuff or something, like it's something that you can figure out by yourself, but having someone tell you and then you consciously trying to apply that, it just cuts so much time in your progression in jiu-jitsu, I think, or I've sort of found. Um, but with all these principles for moves and positions or stuff, they're all great and they help a lot. But also, I really didn't at the start. I didn't really understand sort of the progression of a jiu-jitsu role or a jiu-jitsu match. I sort of was just, on the mat going, all right, cool. What next? I don't really get it. But he clears it out for you. He gives a very clear order of rank for, what's gonna happen for what happens. So you start either standing up or down. There's the initial bout, and then someone ends up in a defensive position and someone ends up in an offensive position. Whenever you're in a defensive position, your one goal is to either get into a neutral or an offensive position. And then from the neutral or offensive position, you either want to get into a better offensive position, or you want to go for a choke or a submission. And when I had that explained to me, I just went, "Ah." Yeah, right. It's so obvious when when someone just explains it that clearly. But when you're on the mats going, "Oh, I'm in mount, but like this is sort of the same as closed guards. If I can just reach up and, choke him, do a lapel choke, then I've got him." But no, 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 no. There's a very clear order of the way that things go, and it's up to you to sort of, go through them with all your techniques and stuff. But that was very helpful. And yeah, that was another great little lesson. But also another good thing about this book is the way that he approaches jujitsu. I sort of thought another thing with the books is I wasn't sure sort of how relevant, well, not how relevant, but how close they would be for beginners and white belts. And I guess the different books are for different grades and different aspects. But I was like, well, they're going to be very like street fight orientated or competition orientated or whatever things a bit more advanced than, I don't know what an arm bar is. But he comes to BJJ from a principle learning perspective rather than how to win a match. And that was so good for a white belt because, I mean, once you get the foundation, now I understand. Once you get the foundational principles, you can progress faster. Once you once all the lessons and the roles that you do on the mat are informed by these basic principles, the further you'll accelerate, the better you'll understand offense and defense, and the more calm you'll be within Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You'll be more calm on the mats. You'll be more calm learning techniques. If you just keep these foundational principles in mind, it's just such a solid base to put all your techniques on. And as you scale up, I mean, it's just going to get better and better for you. So that approach in this book, I feel like, is great for white belts. And also but the way he speaks as well, it's sort of like I keep a jiu-jitsu journal where every day I write down, I try and articulate as best as I can what we did that day, and just to log it and also keep it in my head. And say a couple weeks later, like for example, my Americana problem that I was having last podcast. I I was struggling to apply this Americana. I just couldn't do it, even though I was like one of the biggest, heaviest dudes in the gym. And I was like, oh my god, getting all worked up about it. And I came home and remembered like way back when we did exactly what I was struggling with. We practiced Americanas from Mount. And I was like, okay, well, what do I write down? And I wrote down, I was reading it and I was like, that is exactly the step that I missed out on. So keeping that in mind, I went back again next jiu-jitsu class. Sure enough, I was banging out Americanas left and right. I mean, granted, they're on, smaller people. But it fixed my problem. And I was like, oh God, thank God I wrote this thing down. I feel like for the higher belts, going back and reading this book where he so clearly goes over the foundational principles and techniques, the rank order of matches, what you need to do. It's like one of those moments. It's just coming back and going, oh yeah, I stopped thinking about that. If I can reincorporate this thing that I learned back into my game, it's going to help me overcome this hurdle, or this lull that I'm having at the moment, this break. So that's why I think high belts should get it. I mean, I could be wrong, but do what you want. It's your $8. But yeah, I think it's such a good investment. And also he's very clear in the way he writes, and he creates these awesome analogies. Like the first time I read it, he has he has a bunch of me. He has like the standard chess analogy, which is like, okay, everyone, like from my first um class in jiu-jitsu, everyone's like, oh, it's like human chess. And I was like, okay, yeah, cool, got it. But he has the human chess analogy, explains it brilliantly, explains it probably the best I've heard it explained. Just the rank order of pieces. He has the aspect of controlling the center, which is about controlling hips and how important that is. And that made me really go, okay, right. I see how this applies now. Sure enough, tried it, and it made a big impact. It made a big difference. Um, he has the American football analogy, talking about fighting for inches, and I was like, okay, fighting for inches. I can slow down my game. I don't need to, throw these wild moves and try and, take a full arm or get all the way around the collar at this point for this choke. It's slowly doing little maneuvers, little moves to get into the good spot. It's staying calm and playing the long game, fighting for inches. And I was like, okay, all right, cool. I've got it. But also these analogies, they're great, because once you understand the principle behind it, if you're in a position, sort of don't really know what to do or freaking out, then just the name of or just the analogy will pop into your head, and behind that there's the whole, chapter on the analogy. Like the biggest help for me, well, yeah, I'd say probably one of the biggest helps for me was from one of these analogies, and he calls it the leak and bucket. I won't go into it because you need to get the book. Also, with his book, he's put so much care and effort into it. Like this, you can really tell this is like is just this great culmination of decades of this guy's experience. The way he articulates it is amazing, but also he's created a bunch of instructional videos that once you sign up to the website, get emailed to you as you progress through the book, which is so helpful as well, especially for, beginners. And I know I said don't learn things off videos, but I think that applies more to moves than principles. And the videos help so much, especially having him explain it to you as he's doing it in situ. I'm like, yes, this is great. But the analogy that has probably helped me the most is this. It's an analogy called the leak and bucket. So I was mounted for a change, and just sort of getting swamped. And I was sort of in the panicky, just like trying to bridge but not working, and then sort of going, "What? How can I get out of this? What's going on?" And then leak and bucket popped into my head. And the analogy is sort of, if you have a roof and it has a few leaks in it, where are you going to put the bucket first? And it's on the biggest leak, which is in jiu-jitsu, the biggest threat. And I sort of thought, okay, I'm being mounted. I'm in this position. What is the biggest threat for me right now? And, he was setting up to choke me out with my lapel. I was like, okay, I've got this hand on my lapel. That is going to lead straight. That is the next step to that is he gets the other hand around and I'm being choked. First step, focus on removing the hand from the lapel. Managed to do that. And then we're back a step. Then what is the next biggest leak? And that was, he's still got his hand, so I can't bridge because he's going to catch himself and I can't reverse. Okay, so control the arm. So I managed to control the arm. Then what's the next biggest leak? Okay, I'm being mounted. Now I can bridge and get him off me and reverse. Now I'm just in full guard, and so on and so forth. So yeah, as it goes on, and just that's another example of showing the rank and order of how you're supposed to do things, and it just clarifies things so well. And all these analogies and stuff. This book, while you can read it quickly, I really I strongly recommend either reading it a few times or just reading like a chapter, like even a chapter a week. Go as slow as that. There's 21 chapters. There's 21 weeks. But hearing a principle and applying it are two very different things. Like hearing, especially as some of these principles, I mean, for me, get a little bit more advanced and a little bit more complicated. They take more time to really get into your body, and you can't do more than one at a time. Like you have to go into a class and be like, okay, today I'm going to think about using my shins. And you go into that class and you start using your shins more, and maybe it takes you 2 or 3 sessions for that to really become ingrained in your body. And then you go, okay, what's next? Lick and bucket. And then it takes a couple of sessions for that to become ingrained. And just really let these principles marinate in, because if you just rush through it, I mean, like, yeah, okay, you'll retain a couple of them, and even me, I'm going to go back and read some sections because I've got, I haven't incorporated all of them into my game yet, and it's going to be a slow burn because I'm still learning techniques and stuff like that. But just, I mean, the amount of clarity I've gained from what I've already started to incorporate has just been crazy. Like it's yeah, it's I can't believe how much my game and understanding of jiu-jitsu is improved just by knowing these basic principles. It's been really helpful. Um Another thing for me was, and it sort of comes down to the rank and order of things. A lot of this book, I guess, for me has just been learning the order of a BJJ round and a match. But has been prioritizing defense and don't be counterproductive, which I was like, "Oh, what? How are you being counterproductive if you're trying to, you know, win?" But he's like, okay, so he gives a bunch of great examples, but for like a concept that where you could be counterproductive is if you're trying really, like, well, for going back to my Americana problem, um me trying to go for this Americana was being counterproductive in the way I was doing it, because I was sitting on top. I was, sitting straight up, didn't have good position for mount, so I was getting reversed and swept easily. But also I'm spending so much energy trying to rip this arm off this dude's lapel because he knows exactly what I'm going for. He knows how to gut. I'm spending so much energy and so much effort trying to rip this freaking arm off this guy's lapel that's not getting me anywhere. And then I get swept in reverse, and I've lost this great position and I'm gassed. And I was like, oh, yeah, yeah, okay. The position's lost. Move on to something else. Save energy. Wait for an opening, and exploit exploit the next screw up that they do. rather than trying to, wrench this thing and it being completely counterproductive. So, this book, would I recommend it? Yeah. I mean, if you hadn't gathered that already, yes, absolutely. I would recommend this book to especially white belts, especially if you're in your first year of jiu-jitsu, because while you do eventually get exposed to all these principles, getting exposed to them all in one go and so early, I feel like just sets you up with such a strong foundation to apply all your techniques, apply everything you're going to learn, think about things slowly when you go into rolling, and what before you've built bad habits or haven't applied these things. Um, so for your first year, absolutely, it's €8. It's so cheap, and you get all this information, and it's just such a great starting point for you. I think absolutely white belts, hell yeah. Blue belt and above, I'm honestly not sure. I personally would say yes. I know when eventually I get my blue belt. Even the white. Every couple of months, I feel like I'm going to pick this book up and go through it again because knowing me, I'm going to get carried away with a few things. I'm going to hit slumps and stuff and go, "What's wrong? I suck. Why can't I do this? What the hell?" And then pick this book up. I'm going to go through it, and it's going to be just like my journal. I'm going to hit a concept and go, I've dropped that completely. I've completely forgot it. Start trying to reincorporate it in, and maybe it'll get me out of my slump. Maybe it won't. But I genuinely think that this is and it's such a small investment. It's €8. Like, bro, just get it. And it's such a short read as well. Like, if you do know the principles and you don't need to stop and take time to digest it, like, you could knock this book out so quickly, like 2 hours. And I mean, not if you're going to watch all the videos and stuff as well, which I highly recommend you do. But the book is short, it's cheap, it's got so much valuable information. Highly recommend it to white belts. I reckon high belts should read it too, but that is completely up to you. So there we go. Paulo Guillobel, congratulations on writing an epic book. And thank you so much for everything it has taught me. Also, props for writing it in your second language. Learning jiu-jitsu in my second language, I've found to be quite difficult, but clearly expressing everything that he has in his second language, I think is a great achievement in and of itself. And yeah, congratulations and thank you very much. So with that, I'm going to wrap up episode 3. Thank you for listening. Buy the book. Go buy it on Amazon. And yeah, thanks for listening. See you in the next one.